Oh, that's
Okay. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Bristol School Committee. Begin with our roll call. Becky Cooper.
right here.
June Donington.
Here.
Marianne Santos.
Here.
I'm Darren Carlucci. Emil Lugash is unable to attend. We'll do our pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You stand in front of you, Jay.
Any agenda adjustments this evening?
No. Nope.
The only thing is I just want to let everybody know that they'll be getting an email from me regarding the agenda for the delegate assembly
Oh, the
with
main-
all of
For
the
the main
school
proposals. The
board
main
association.
school board, yes.
Okay.
When is that?
That's on the 19th
Of this month?
this month, yeah.
Thank you. We'll have our public comment. A couple things for those of you who joined us last month that I failed to mention that was pointed out to me with regards to public comment. Please. It's just our comment to the board about we'd like it to be germane to the agenda, if possible. Please state your name prior to, so we know who we're speaking with. Don't expect a board response. If we can, we may, but this time it's just for comment. And oftentimes we don't have the information that people are looking for right, at hand, and we don't want to speak out of turn. And the last thing would be just I was asked not to have folks not to refer to personnel by name. Just refer. That's privacy reasons. Yeah. So with that, I will open up public comment. All right. Yes, please. Yeah, Lori.
My name is Lori Morrison, resident of New Harbor. Is there an update that can be shared about the bus? Because it was reinstated, but I don't know the details about that.
Yeah, and if you don't have a packet, in our old business are all the things that I took notes on from the last meeting that I got answers to about those.
So it says it was reinstated, but there's, curious to know what went into your decision to do it, where the funding came from, and I got it all happened. So where would I get that information once those decisions are made?
We can, during the old business, I can give an update on
Yeah,
that.
it seems helpful to know because
Sure.
the budget's really important, and the safety is and everything, so thanks.
And then the only other thing that I would say, like I said, we'll get to that. But if there are numbers questions, a lot of times if you did contact the central office specifically, they'll have things at hand.
I'm interested just in the district and how does it have to come into the decision? It doesn't have to be blank, it just has to be, this is why we came to this conclusion context. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to our presentation. Our action on our minutes from everyone got their minutes from our September 4th meeting. Okay, that look okay to everyone? So I will take a motion.
I move that we accept the minutes from September 4th.
So motion from Becky,
Second.
second from Marianne. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. In the chair's report this evening, I'd just like to say this is the regular meeting of the school. The next regular meeting of the school board will be on November 6th at our regular time, which is 5:30. The next meeting of the AOS board will be on October 17th, so next week at 6 o'clock. And is it still to be decided?
They're still trying to verify whether it'll be at Coastal Rivers. It'll either be at Coastal Rivers or Great Salt Bay. We should know tomorrow. Lindsay and I are meeting tomorrow. We're doing the agenda work on that for that meeting tomorrow. So we should have a concrete answer. What I'll do is I'll email all the boards and let them know where that's going to be.
And then our AOS 93 report from our AOS 93er, June.
It was a lengthy meeting. Most of the discussion centered around reorganization. And there was no conclusion reached. So right now it is up to the individual schools to work out what their best steps forward are. And I know that is very vague. I would encourage all of the board members, and I think you probably already have, to go online and to watch a video of the proceedings, because that will give you some good insight. And by the way, for those like Lori, you may not know, the public is always cordially invited to come to those AOS meetings. Sometimes, depending on where we physically meet, the space can be quite limited. Sometimes, yeah. But just FYI.
Thank you.
Any questions for June? All right. Superintendent's report.
Okay, mine will be pretty brief. Just a reminder, the MSMA Fall Conference is coming up. That is October 24th and 25th in Augusta. If you have never been to that, I would encourage you to attend it at least once so you can experience it. But it's really a pretty good presentation of valuable information. So if you are interested in attending, we will register you. All you have to do is just send me an email, and I'll have Linda take care of it at the central office, and we will get you registered for that. Lindsay and I will both be going to that. But if you have any interest, just reach out to me and let me know, and I will get that to you. The second thing on the list was the New England Association of School Superintendents Regional Conference. That was down in Westbrook, Connecticut. I went down to that last Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. It was interesting. I'll just leave it at that. I know that you take things sometimes from a conference and know I might do it differently or something like that. And Maine is hosting it in a couple of years, and I plan on helping out in any way I can with the conference when it comes to Maine. And I think I took some things away from that perhaps we do differently, but not throwing any shade or anything on the Connecticut representatives. Beautiful location, a lot of vendors, and a lot of good collegial conversation, and the presenters were very good too. So that's where I was last week. District school related information, really I'm sharing it now with you. I'm still trying to get out into schools. A-team met today, our A-team, the whole A-team, including the Great Salt Bay administrators, and then the administrators that I work with stayed after, and we had a academic focused meeting with just those individuals, and we're really trying to look at where are we as a district now, where do we want to go, and how are we going to get there. So we're really in those, I said today, I think when I was talking to the administrators, as this Great Salt Bay thing happens, it does open some doors for us. It will give us opportunities to do some things differently, perhaps, or do some new things or try new things. So yes, it's a parting of the ways, but I think it's also the possibility of improving and doing things differently on our side of it. So looking forward to that with optimism. But again, I just have to applaud the administrators that we have here in this district. I'm so impressed with them. The board member handbook, I shared that with you electronically. Mm-hmm. So if you got that, it's quite a lengthy thing. That's why I didn't print it, because it was a considerable amount of pages. And but if you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out to me and ask. If I can't answer your question, I certainly will reach out to a rep from the Maine School Management Association. And that kind of segues into the next piece of my agenda here is the board training that just occurred, which is why this meeting is starting an hour later, is because the two of us were at the presentation, the board training workshop by Maine School Management. And I I don't know, did you find that? I'll turn to you.
I actually thought that it was very valuable. There was a lot of good information that was shared. Even if you have served on boards before, even this board, I think the information that was presented was a very good reminder of what our responsibilities are. And I will have to say that I learned a couple of things along the way. I actually think it would have been not one to ask for longer meetings, but I think that we could have benefited from a longer meeting going into greater depth.
Should this board ever desire to have a training like that? This was geared strictly for it was really the Great Salt Bay Board training. They just opened the doors for us to come in and join if we wanted to. So we were appreciative of that. So I did get the packet of information, but they tailor that training towards the individual district that they're presenting it to. So everything says Great Salt Bay School District on it. So when I'm going to make copies of everything and share it with you electronically. But when you see it, it's going to say Great Salt Bay. And in the meeting, they kept referring to her. When they were talking about the superintendent, it was her. I'm sitting right next to Lindsay, but it was her district. So that's why they were doing that. So that will be information that I will send out to you. But should you look that over and you think it is, and I do agree with you. I have one of these every year in the districts I'm in. So this is 5th year, 6th year. I've heard the same thing, but it reinforces things that you maybe forget. And it can create questions that you may have down the road, but I do find it very helpful and informational. But as I said, they will do that free of charge. So should this board ever want to do something like that, you certainly can. And I do agree, the 50 minutes that was allotted for it, she could have easily gone twice that, I think, with what she was presenting. But MSMA does a really nice job with that.
Todd, I had a quick question
Yeah.
about that board member handbook.
Yeah.
Because it's an electronic version, does this mean that they can flag changes so that
I
you're
believe I sent it to you as a PDF,
right?
which you wouldn't be able to do anything.
No, not
Oh.
us, but do the publishers, like if there's been a change in whatever it is?
I
do
don't
they-
believe so.
Right.
I don't
So,
believe so. So
okay.
short of comparing the previous edition to the current one, you might. I can ask. I'll ask.
Spelling errors?
No, I think she's talking about changes, so you don't have to,
Like,
Oh,
if you look at it, you
So
won't
you
know what the
don't-
change is. So,
Right.
yeah, let me just see. Revisions.
Right.
Revisions, anyway indicated.
no, not,
I thought that's where you're going originally.
no.
Indicated.
I meant substantive content changes.
I'll find out.
No biggie.
It's good information to have, though. And then on the next one, the building project update, I was just talking with John a little earlier about it, but it's really kind of a holding pattern right now because of that whole issue that came up with the firewall. There's a meeting tomorrow, unfortunately, the day after that we meet here tonight. But should anything of any significance come out of that meeting, we certainly will make sure that it gets communicated.
So it's a meeting with the fire marshal.
I don't know, John, who's in that meeting tomorrow? Is it just the weekly dovetail meeting?
So our reps will have.
Okay.
Okay.
Could you update us what you're talking about? The
About the
firewall?
firewall?
A fireproof wall needed to be built all the way up through the ceiling into the attic space in order for them to work on the rest of the building. And that wasn't done over the summer. It didn't get done over the summer. So that needs to get done before they can, while the school is occupied, in order to have school, they can't work in there unless there's a fireproof wall in between.
When are they going to do that?
Well, I think what this meeting is probably about costs of what that's gonna do. It's not just, they gotta cut around all these big vent pipes and all that stuff. And so what we did was kind of we put things on a holding pattern so they could go up into the overhead and do a proper estimate of it. We were given an option for them to just do it and blow through and keep going while the school is underway. But we said, well, we can wait until we get a proper estimate.
Okay.
And that was not, correct me if I'm wrong, I wasn't here when the project started, but the original blueprints that received initial approval
Yeah.
had it going to the height it's at now.
Yeah.
It was after the fact and after
Right,
those plans were
right.
approved that the brakes were put on and said, no, this has to be adjusted differently.
Okay.
So that was not, that the additional is what Darren's referring to, is the money wasn't budgeted for that. So we've got to look at what the cost is going to be for that.
Should the person who created the blueprints have known that? But
He claims he didn't. Well, there's a timing issue because it was, it wasn't done during the summer. And so the fire marshal expected for us to get, that would have been fine for the summer because nobody was in the building. But then once school started, then that meant that firewall needed to go all the way to the,
So they had expected they would get to that before fall.
Yeah.
And because of various things, they didn't.
Correct.
Okay.
Any idea as to how long that might take to
No.
actually complete that?
the actual firewall part.
Uh-huh,
Well, I guess they're gonna have this meeting tomorrow that will
okay.
update them, yeah. So we've given them time to get up into the overhead, look at things, and then so they'll come up with a cost and a time.
So that would come out of our contingency.
Yeah, that'll be out of contingency.
Good job.
Thank you.
All right, let's develop the project. Any other questions about that? Okay. Ms. Rivera.
So don't look in your packet.
Don't.
Packet
How could it not?
version looks like Noble Burrows.
What?
That's not my principal's report. so
I-
that's okay.
Yeah, I was wondering about
Are you
that.
serious?
About that.
But I will,
About that font.
I can give you a copy of this one. I just noticed, because I have mine with me. And I'm like, wait a minute. I know that teacher, and they don't work in my building. I didn't know. So, right. Well, that one has, yeah, that 100 feet, I really.
Okay.
So I will copy this for folks before we leave tonight. We need a
Okay.
paper copy. But, so updates from Bristol, our enrollment, I got 189 now. 189 pre-K to 8. We are very steady, which is great. Some of our classrooms continue to be larger than I want, and some are smaller, because the new kids never move into the smallest class. They move into the one that's already bursting at the seams. So anyway, so we actually have 26 as of today in grade 3. Somebody arrived yesterday, which we knew was coming. So we're at 190, not 189. So other highlights, some scheduling highlights for the start of the year. We made some changes at the middle level. Those of you who've lived through having middle school kiddos go to Bristol or worked in middle school know that when you're in the same building from pre-K or K through 8, that group dynamic can get very familiar, almost too familiar by junior high, because you've been together for a long time. So we made some changes to the middle level schedule, some minor ones. One was to institute more time for literacy, because our ELA time and reading time are the same as the other subjects, and it's not enough to kind of get to all of the components of literacy. So we shortened the periods this year by about 7 minutes and created a smaller reading block that's a multi-age reading block, and kids are assigned based on their generally on their reading level. So it's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade mixed groups. Some groups are heavier 6th grade, some are heavier 8th, depending on the reading levels. That kind of falls sometimes within the age development, but it's been great because these groups are between 6 and 12 kids, not the 19 to 20 that are in those homerooms. And we have other teaching staff working with them, as well as some of the ed who are clearly have teaching degrees but working as ed tech degrees or have more expertise. So that's been going well. They really just got started with reading instruction. They started the year doing some getting to know you activities in those groups once they were started, and then they did their state testing in those small groups as opposed to doing it in the big homeroom, where they did it during that time, not just in the small groups. But so that's been successful. Our new special ed teacher and our new ELA teacher are kind of taking the lead on some of the planning, and Caitlin, the special ed teacher, has gotten some feedback already from some of the staff that the kids are really they're finding that connection with kids in those smaller groups has really been positive so far, and having those mixed relationships with other kids in other grades has been positive. So far, so good. The other thing with middle level is we're calling the last period, it's been called study block the past, it's been called activity period, we're calling it flex block. And on Wednesdays this trimester, or through hopefully the winter break, they have chosen chosen an activity for Wednesdays. So Wednesdays is things like foreign language, things like game time.
Game club, art exploration, nature trail.
Yeah.
Another one there.
Yeah, there's
Oh,
about-
design squad.
Design Squad, Mr. Kraft. So there's, and like once we have the tech room available, the new tech room, Mr. Koff will have an activity for the kids, during that time. So we're hoping to do like 3 blocks this year of choice for kids on Wednesdays. So again, some of the other days they can have some study all time. That's also in art, music, band chorus rather, and art buddies all take place on other days during that block. So far so good. With that plan and that schedule. And then we're also utilizing our intervention teacher role, and they're helping with having some mixed grade 1-2 reading groups with more staff. So those kids are getting that instruction in small groups with a variety of people. So it's been nice to be able to offer. Really, the only challenge this fall with all this is, okay, what room do we put them in? There's a room in that hallway, or let's kick anyone out of the staff room, just because we do small group work when we're already down classrooms. We've been creative. It's working. It's working also. So other updates and events, the Lions Club is coming again to provide the free vision screening to kids in pre-KK 1, 3, 5, and 7. That's happened before. It's happening, I think it's tomorrow. It was today.
They were here.
That's right, when we were at admin.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't see them. And then the flu clinic is on October 15th. So that's Lincoln Health comes and provides that for our students and staff. Our election day on November 5th is again in the gym. So rather than have a PD day, because we gave that PD day to teachers back in August on that Thursday, it will be a remote learning day for students. So we will send packets home on Friday, and students will do remote learning through packets or through some Google Meet sessions for that day. I'm asking staff to be on site for part of that day. Some of that work they can do here, and some, there's some flex time because I think the parking, we're not gonna be able to park in the regular parking lot because of the voting. So I think if I do flex time, some staff can park out back and up above, and we'll have a conversation with the library because maybe they'll let us park there.
Oh, yeah.
If they're not busy that day.
They're closed.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, they're closed on
are
Tuesday.
they
They're
closed?
closed on
Perfect.
Tuesdays,
I'll
yeah.
talk to Jackie and that'll
Yeah.
probably be fine. Other instruction, it's testing month again. It's NWEA, our main 3-year assessment. It's gone very well. We have most classes, I think finished in terms of the whole group. 4 or 5 was yesterday and today and tomorrow. And then 6, 7, and 8 math, I think, is all that we have left for whole classes for the state testing piece. So that's been nice to have mostly checked off the list. That data is helpful because we can still get our NUEA scores. We just don't get the state score. So they assign at the end of the year that score based on growth as well as achievement. And those scores are not yet published from last year. So, but we found out that the science ones are ready. We just haven't been given access yet.
I got that this
Oh,
afternoon.
good. Yeah.
And I'll be able to share it.
We'll have the science
Yep.
data from last year for grades 5 and 8. Other things. So we have, I just talked about the middle school reading block flex time. Oh, band and chorus going very well. We're collaborating with South Bristol. So on Tuesdays, we bus the kids over to South Bristol. And on Thursdays, they bus their kids here for chorus. So Caitlin, our music teacher, goes over there for the band, and we have yet to be able to bring all our kids between us having a field trip yesterday for grade 6, and then something, I think last week was Vinyl Haven, and then they were on a trip the week before. The whole group band hasn't all been together, a smaller group has, but Thursdays for chorus has been wonderful so far, and they bring their kids here. So The big impact, obviously, there's some transportation costs and logistics for each school one time. So it's harder for us on Tuesdays because we have to get kids there and they leave a little earlier, but they're leaving during that reading block and we're making some accommodations on Tuesdays for the reading not being new instruction. And then on Thursdays, it obviously affects South Bristol's kids leaving earlier because to account for transportation time. But it's been pretty minor in terms of that impact. It's like, wow, we should have thought of this sooner. So that's going well. And then speaking of collaboration with South Bristol, tomorrow's workshop, not tomorrow, I keep thinking today's Thursday. Darn, 3 times it's happened to me. Friday's workshop day, the morning plans are with South Bristol for collaborating camps. So that's been so far really positive to work smarter, not harder, and really maximize some impact on kids. So trips, lots of trips going on. The kayaking for 8th grade went very well. That's been now a new annual routine for kids. We tend to put so much at the end of 8th grade that the last month of school feels chaotic. So this was this idea a couple of years ago, and doing something to start the year with them as a group has been a real positive.
Did they go up the river?
They went down to, down to the fort, to that, and they right around St. John's Bay there, and there's a tour that they do. They had 2 choices, and one made perfect sense for the kids, and they spent 3 hours on the kayaks with the person from their organization, and I think we had 2 or 3 chaperones from school. It was great. So the annual Wallanock golfing trip's coming up, and the Cider Hill and Disc Golf for grade 7, the Biscuit Orchard trip, our Coastal Rivers and Farms trips. The 3rd grade tennis has been a success. They're doing that in the gym on Fridays with Georgia from the program at the Y, and I guess she's won some awards. So the next time she comes, the national tennis folks are like honoring her, so they have to do a little video of her doing some of her instructions. So they'll be doing some of that while they're here. So that'll be fun. They might interview some of us around Georgia's impact on the program. So that's cool. So keep them busy. And then, like I said, the PD day is this Friday. We have a former AOS employee that's been hired to do a little bit of the PED with our staff. So Ann Hassett's going to do some work around Lexia data and how to use that website, and another session on error analysis. So looking at student assessment and really making informed decisions about what that tells you about your kid needs. So she's going to help lead 2 sessions. We're going to talk about our communication platforms, some other small topics throughout the day. So South Bristol will be with us for the morning. So got a good plan. That day is just for teachers here at Bristol. We'll have some other days for the ed techs later.
Great. What, did the geologists already come here?
No, geologists from Middlebury are coming to the because there's a big group of people who belong to this organization, not just Middlebury, but they're coming between 11:30 and 12. His name is Dave West, who's been communicating with me, to visit the bedrock that was exposed by the softball field. So they'll be here, and he said it would be fine if we're out there, text us when he's near, so we know to kind of, anybody who wants to go kind of see what they're doing and hear about what makes Bristol schools bedrock in their field unique enough that a group of 20 people are driving from Middlebury to our site, one of like 3 places around Maine. So
Wow.
who was that?
What is that?
Between 11:30
Tomorrow?
and 12 Friday.
Oh, Friday.
Yeah, Friday, I think is what he said. He said,
Yeah.
we'll be here around 11:30 noon. I'll try to send you a message so that I can get a better idea of ETA, because they're doing like 3 or 4 sites between Middlebury and here and back. So
Yeah, I got the kids that day.
some graduate students, some other folks that belong to this geology organization.
That's cool.
So, yeah, so I know some of my staff will be, who are into that kind of thing, will be excited to hear about that part. It's kind of cool. Feel free to come, Darren.
I sure will.
So.
Great. Any other questions for Jennifer? All right. Thank you. Finance report. Mr. Peter.
Okay, one of the things that we have not been able to do for the last several months is generate an end of month report. But I have some here. These are Aptiv Funds is still working, the company is still working to fix the report the way I'd like it. But I've been able to figure out a few different tricks to be able to generate one now. And so I built this out of a few reports
Thank you.
and put it together in Excel. It takes a lot longer than what it should. And I made one little error that's in the, a couple of formulas in the amount remaining and two cost centers don't add up. So the amount remaining is short $300,000 in the bottom line, but everything else is accurate for where we are right now. Jen and I, 2 weeks ago in September, after your September meeting went through, before your September meeting, we tried to do a lot of estimates on how the different, how the CBA and wage and benefit guides for support staff and other changes would affect the budget. And we went through in September and found all kinds of things that, we had calculated that everything was going to be okay, and we knew what we were shifting around. Now we can actually see, now that we've made the payroll adjustments from the CBA and from the wage and benefit raise, now we can see what's actually encumbered, and this report is mostly so Jen and I can continue to do the work of identifying any other budget revisions that need to be made. But I just want to show you mostly this so you can see that we're actually making progress with that fund getting the reports out. And that you can read all this. It's just two sections. The cost center is, I think it's student staff support and other instruction. They didn't carry the formula for the last column.
Oh, yeah.
But that is it comes out to you, there's 1.8 million remaining after all encumbrances for payroll, assessment for the central office, secondary tuition, and the current planned expenditures. So that's really right where we should be. And, partnering with Jen to figure out exactly where we want to spend things and not spend things is the current work. So we'll give more information about how everything landed next month on that. But that's the progress update. And then in your packages is a model that we're sharing that was requested actually by the reorganization committee, just the reorganization committee. And we shared with some of the people in this room last week, and we've been sharing with all the boards this month. And we shared with Jefferson and Nobleboro last week. So now effectively all of Todd's schools, some of you have seen it in all the 4 MSUs. And we've had a chance to sort of get this information out there. And we'll talk about it here with tonight, and then it's up just next week, and then all 4 boards have been fully updated on what we're seeing. We are operating with the awareness that Great Salt Bay is making every effort and to withdraw. They're meeting right now, and their goal out of this meeting tonight, we had an admin meeting with Lindsay this morning. She gave a very detailed update on what she's doing. Their goal tonight is to walk out of there with the withdrawal plan to send to the commissioner at the Department of Education tomorrow morning. And it is my expectation, and I believe Lindsay and the Great Salt Bay Board's expectation, that it will be approved without any problem. There hasn't been any, that is also the guidance that Drummond Woodson gave Lindsay and I when we met with him a couple of weeks ago about what should we expect from the commissioner. But that's not a done deal until the commissioner actually signs off on it and doesn't ask for any further information, et cetera. And time is of the essence because we have to submit a budget we have to have a public meeting for a budget for the AOS in about 10 weeks. And today, we don't know exactly whether there's 7 towns in the AOS or 4 towns in the AOS for next year. So we're hoping that the commissioner acts expediently and that we get an answer on GSB's withdrawal plan quickly so that we can just know what we're doing and know that we're doing it appropriately. There is a possibility, there's an outside chance at this point, but there's clearly a possibility that we'll be a 7-town AOS again going into FY26 just because things couldn't happen fast enough. But we can't wait and see that. We also have to prepare to be a 4-town AOS. And given the speed, there's not really any time to change how that 4-town AOS would be governed and how its interlocal agreement would be managed. Interlocal agreement said, basically says that GSB can withdraw based on the actions it's taking now, and that those remaining are still governed by the same, sort of provisions of both the statute on how AOSs work and our interlocal agreement. And by statute, we are required to use the census to determine the weighted votes, which you can see these new percentages here. We have the column here. Chuck, did you get a package? We have the FY25 approved budget and the revisions. There's no revisions to the revenue. The revisions are all below, which shows that we've added a second superintendent, et cetera. But all the cost centers, the articles are exactly the same, the total the same. But you can see how the revenue is this year. And then in a 4 MSU model, when the voting is redistributed and the cost share is redistributed according to the plan, you can see what will happen. So Bristol's expenditure, and what we've done here, and this is, Todd and I talked about how to approach this. The budget total for this we're operating right now is $1,365,000. We have removed the GSB costs, and we reduced the IT director position from a full position with health insurance and everything to a $25,000 stipend for next year. Because we believe at this point we've got to cut something, and we thought we'd start by showing that we know that, and we've cut that since it was not a full position. But we do need $25,000 in there for cybersecurity and other device support with central office, et cetera. But it's 2 people getting that stipend. So when we take, based off that leaving, the IT director, we get down to 1.091 million. But that's, that is more per share than where we are now. And the assumption and the kind of awareness within those of us who are in the central office is that just losing GSB, you still need a full team. You can't operate the AOS central office, with one less budget to manage and without the secondaries. You'd think it would be a lot less work. It's some less work, but it actually, for the way we built the central office, it'll reduce an overload and burden breaking system, to a managed, potentially, hopefully, sustainable manageable operation. But we still need the full team that's in there right now for 4-town MSU. That's the request that we made to the board, to the AOS board, and the 4 towns will need to vote on it and approve a budget. And I know they all don't feel that way. That's the work I think Todd and I are going to try and do to convince them of that, convince you of that. But for the sake of just seeing how these numbers work and understanding it, we've just put in, full office minus GSB and the IT director. You would have a 29.82% share of the AOS, and your cost would be increased by, in the order of $80,000. And the other towns would see comparable increases for their proportional increases. But again, the thing that sticks out here when you look at this is that, South Bristol, they go from 74 to 98. It's not a big hit. And they're not paying, when you have a $1,091,000 budget, one town is taking up a quarter of the work is only paying, $98,000. It really starts sticking out even more so than it did before. So I don't know what the remedy for that is. There is no remedy for FY26 because it's just too late to change this. And in your discussions, we're talking about really FY27. And what I've shown here is a new cost sharing formula that first breaks it even. Everybody pays the same. Everybody pays 25%. I think that's what it takes. And it might take a little bit more on some weeks to kind of deal with some of the issues in the biggest school, Jefferson, than it does in things ebb and flow, and I think it all shakes out to pretty much the same amount of work for each district. And that's something that, Todd can bring some perspective to and throughout these discussions. But what I've done here financially is just model that, what would it cost, what would a quarter of the cost be? And you can see what that is. And, in that case, your expenditure for this model would go up, just $25,000. But South Bristol's would go up $180,000. They really take the hit. Noblesboro goes up a little bit, and Jefferson takes a big savings. They take they would save from the 4 MSU model to the 4 MSU new cost sharing formula, they're saving $130,000. So it's certainly in Jefferson's interest. Not at all in South Bristol's financial interest, but what South Bristol would get, as all the towns would get, is an equal voice, and that may be worth paying for. That's up to them. But anything that the 4 MSU model that I have here that shows the weighted percentages, the AOS, there's no way around that. You would have to not be an AOS to achieve this 25%.
Okay.
Or anything other than what's in this the 4 MSU model percentage. You might get into a negotiation and say, okay, everybody's going to get an equal vote, but South Bristol, we get it. We're only going to make you pay 20% or instead of 25, and we'll split the difference. Or you can change the cost sharing formula a little bit from the voting if you were in a different type of organization, and then that different type of organization would be the city. However, this would not be the same flavor of ESC that we were promoting when we expected 7 towns to be, because the 7 towns have 2 superintendents, and therefore, we had a plan where the finance director would be the executive director of the ESC, and we would separate the superintendent and special ed from the ESC. But in this model, you have 1 superintendent. So you can package everything up, roll it in, you have 1 organization, and it just has the same model of the superintendent, who is the executive director as well, carries both, just 1 role. And you pack special ed into it, and you pack everything in. It's the same as the AOS and you do get the subsidy.
Mm-hmm.
But all of this is going to take iterations of discussion. And, it's going to take a year. You have about a year. But you're back to, if you want to do this, you got next October is your deadline to vote on an ESC.
Right.
And that would be, that would be if all 4 towns were willing to advance that model. And if South Bristol was willing to take the kind of financial hit that this shows they may need to. And if you actually stay together as an AOS between now and then, and if you build a budget for this year that you're all willing to participate in. So there's a lot of things there that I'm just sketching out the path of decision-making for the boards. The AOS meets on the 15th, is it, Todd?
Next Thursday, I believe.
17.
Yeah.
So they meet on the 17th, and at that point, they'll hear what happened with the GSB withdrawal plan, which is going to come out of tonight's meeting. We'll all hear that before then, but they'll discuss what that means. It is possible that Lindsay will have heard back from the commissioner about whether or not she thinks she can act quickly on it or not. Just get some indication of, this is going to get, we just got to process it as fast as we can. It might be 2 or 3 weeks, or it might be, we're not ready to move this fast. There's no way you're going to hear from us until February. I have no idea. But I do believe it'll move fast. As John Woodson said, in the last call Lindsay and I had with them, the commissioner has been well aware of every step we've taken along the way. They're supportive of all the work that's been done in the reorganization. And now that you have a plan, they're going to do what they can to expedite it. We see what happens when it happens. So the 4 MSU, that'll all get discussed, and then we'll get direction. I'm sure we'll get direction out of that meeting, for Todd and I to come back at a November meeting with a plan and a budget. And at this point, this is pretty close to the budget we would have. But if we are asked to show other ways to model how the central office would work, we would do so. So that's where we are right now. So that's all as just a sort of update. There isn't any action taken, there isn't any solid here, other than these are the things that we are now looking at to help you through the process and to make sure everybody stays aware of what we're seeing.
So when, the AOS must, is it the cost sharing formula or the voting must be based on the census?
Both.
Okay, then how can we, so the census isn't equal, how is it then we get to come up with the 4 equal?
You would have to become an ESC to do that,
Okay,
because at that point, you're just contracting with the Central Lincoln County School System to provide these services, rather than the Central Lincoln County school system is a governmental entity. It's a different
right, okay.
type
that's-
of legal entity.
Okay,
And if you're, and the way the AOSs were built, they were built under one person, one vote democracy. And the way the ESC is built is under a service center that can contract with the towns to provide services.
Okay.
And it was compared, Drummer Wilson said, it's just like your HVAC contractor. You just do a contract with them and get the service. Nobody needs to, it isn't that, they don't need representation. It's just a contractor. So the Central Lincoln County School System is a contractor, governed by and owned by the school districts, the 4 school districts. So it's a unique kind of contract, but it operates like one, even though you own it.
thank you.
In a perfect world, and by a perfect world at this point, based on what we know, is that everything goes very smoothly with the GSB withdrawal, leaving four towns left in the AOS. What would what financial model would have to be in place until such time as an ESC could be restructured or could evolve?
The path of least resistance is the AOS, to stay in the AOS.
Which would mean
would be
that
this.
the existing financial model would be in place. So essentially, we would be looking at close to a 30% increase in budget,
In this particular line.
in
of
this
budget.
particular
You know,
line budget.
Actually, I've always looked at these numbers as well. That's a big change and everything, but somebody pointed out to me just yesterday, I forget who it was now, whoever I was talking to yesterday. Oh, it was actually our adult ed director, that, the difference between, if you look at it, between 246 to 325 is, it's $80,000. That's $80,000 in your $8 million budget. That's, that's what you pay out of your $8 million budget. So in that, if you look at it through that lens, it's not the biggest cost you have.
Mhm.
It's still $80,000. But it is, in other towns where it's smaller, like Noblesboro, it is what it is, but you have to look at it through the right lens. And when I isolate it here, and you're seeing 80,000, remember that's just one piece of your much larger puzzle.
Right.
If you're not an AOS, if you try to, I don't know I really don't think, from what I've seen, I don't think it would be, if we try not to be an AOS, but in FY26, I don't know how you do that. I mean, GSB is doing all this stuff, but then now to withdraw, you haven't started that process. I don't think you can withdraw.
Right,
I don't think you can just take your ball and run away.
exactly.
I just don't think there's any
Yeah.
option.
Yeah.
Until FY27.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, that's why it's important to understand this and to talk about, and we've talked about both sides of right sizing the central office. Nobody wants it to be, everybody wants it to be lean and just be, nobody wants to start investing in some big, office operation that's oversized and is built too large. But nobody wants to be, have an inefficient operation that's kind of breaking at the seams right now.
Right.
And so that's the big discussion. And it is going to cost money to keep everything you have. It is, but I think that the case is going to be made from this administration that that's really the only choice that we see as a way to provide the services. But you have partners that govern with you that have significant voting majority that make the otherwise.
So looking at a potential timeline for changes, if changes were to occur. And I'm not saying that they would. We would be looking at least 2 fiscal years before any changes would probably take place. Fiscal year
That's- yeah,
26 and
the fiscal year
27?
right now,
Right,
and the one you're preparing to build,
right.
and then the next one, there could be changes.
So we're in fiscal year 25 now.
Yeah.
Then there's 26. So we would not be looking at any potential changes until 27.
That's correct.
Okay,
But we would
Okay.
have to be making that decision right now and moving on it right now.
right.
And I don't mean to get involved in your board politics and
Mhm.
town politics, but just to frame another situation that's gonna be part of the discussion going forward about all this. I think there will be discussion that Jane should be prepared for at the AOS 93 board next week about if GSB is withdrawing, do they have any votes in this budget?
Oh, yeah.
Because
Mhm.
right now, they're still board members. In fact, they chair the board and they're the treasurer of the board.
Yeah.
2 of the 3 officers. And they currently have a 40% share in the voting. But I don't know what this is gonna be a test of the.
And it would be helpful, I did look at the interlocal agreement for the proposed ESC, and I did see some of the language that was in place that addressed, well, if somebody is withdrawing, these are the things that can happen, and this is what happens with voting. But I'm not familiar with what happens with the current AOS agreement. Could you maybe fill us in on that?
Yes and no. I think that Todd and I should both take a very close look at that in the next week to be
Okay.
prepared to answer questions in detail, because it's been a while since we've had to do that. Lindsay was looking at it very closely because she's taking action on that.
Mhm.
But my understanding is that the AOS board, GSB is still part of it. And the board decisions that the board makes are still theirs to make. Now, there will be pressure from Jefferson and Noble boroughs mostly, that if they're leaving, they have no right to vote on a budget that doesn't affect them.
I had this conversation with Lindsay, expressing that concern. What she said to me, now granted, this is just in conversation, was that those 3 towns would abstain from any voting.
They will abstain. So they've already agreed to do that.
They've already talked about
They
it, yeah.
already basically understand that. So that's gonna be that is gonna, so there won't be any outside support.
Mhm.
This is the voting model that goes into this year's budget,
Right.
if they abstain.
Okay.
Which, I'm not trying to make any judgment on that. Ethically, it makes sense.
Mhm.
But at the same time, you begin to feel the impact of your minority voting share pretty fast.
I have a question about voting. If there are only 4 schools who are allowed to vote because the other ones are
I
abstaining,
know what you're gonna say,
50-50,
Yeah.
what happens?
Well, that
Still
won't be this
weighted.
year,
It's
this
still
year.
because you're still in your
Still
waiting.
weighted.
Yeah, yeah.
That's an FY 27 model.
Concern.
question that we
Right,
have to address.
okay.
And theoretically, if there's a tie, there's no action.
Right,
That doesn't solve things, but
right,
we need Drummond Woodson to weigh in on that, but we haven't had the direction to go talk to Drummond Woodson about that model yet.
right.
And that's what, that's why we're starting to throw this out and start thinking about these issues. And so that we get direction to ask the right questions and provide answers. But we're at, just trying to kind of frame it for you right now. Both financially and, the legal path and the decisions that need to be made and when. This budget coming up on us so fast is a really urgent driver of a lot of decisions that will impact us for a long time.
So what is it that you need from us at this point?
Nothing,
Nothing?
not right now.
That's it.
Okay.
You know what's going on. We can start
Any
thinking
questions?
about
If you have
talking to each
questions.
other.
Okay.
I think that, this information is for all of you. It's also for June, knowing what she's walking into next week. as you realize. And I don't know how you guys work, but you know, if there's any discussion you want to have now about preparing, you want to send June with any sort of direction, or just, I don't know, can be any direction. You're gonna go there and see what happens. And, but I just want to make sure all boards, we had the same conversation with Bill and Jefferson, all boards need to know what they need to, how they need to engage at this week's meeting, next week's meeting with the AOS, so that they can move forward to put a budget together this year, because there isn't time to put that off.
Jim, you better bring cookies, that's what I.
Yeah, bring some cookies.
And lots
I
of.
brought them last time, it didn't do any good.
Bring a different.
I liked 'em.
kind.
You liked them?
I liked them.
All right, we will wait and see.
Mr. Chair, you know, I'm not supposed to ask questions, but I would like to, because I listened, I thought that video of the last AOS meeting was very enlightening. There's not a lot of unfriendly characters sitting there. Okay, but what I came away with that is that I'm going to ask you, I thought that the RSU, the pulling out the big RSU was dead in the water because of the killing the ESC.
No.
And that was the issue, that DOE would not approve what they want to do unless they could come up with a plan for the services that they are now not going to get by not getting.
They're gonna pay for them. Their plan is to pay for them on their own.
I haven't seen it, I don't know that, is there a plan out there?
They have a plan
You
to,
have a plan.
Yeah, they just don't independent-
we don't, it'd be nothing to us.
They just build their own business office.
Okay,
They don't
that plan
solo.
is completely,
Completely
cut
independent,
the car right off.
Yeah.
100%.
You just have to wave at it when you drive by. Okay, thank you. That's the question. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay. Facilities and maintenance, by Mr. Carroll.
Well, not really a whole lot going on. We're moving ahead, we're going into heating season, so we're working out some funds out of that. And that I never been in really. Other than that, things are moving along.
Except John and I are gonna switch jobs now.
Good eye clerk,
I don't know about that.
everyone else is good.
Any questions for John? Thank you much. Bristol South Coast Restructuring Committee. Would you be able to speak to that?
Sure, yeah.
Since you're also on that committee.
So, yeah, so basically, our agenda in meeting was to sort of process all the different discussions and meetings and things that have been happening, and specifically the AOS meeting where the ESC was pretty much at this point declared dead in the water. So we kind of came together, and Peter and Todd came and led the meeting, which was very helpful. End result of the meeting was, right now, we're gonna sort of back off on this formal restructuring process in order to see how this restructuring of the AOS is just going with GSB pulling out, and also giving some time for us to test the waters, and Todd to kind of test the waters with the other boards and see what how things are going to move forward with that as GSB withdraws, and also trying to see if maybe relations may be better without GSB as far as the four schools and the four towns kind of getting more in sync with their philosophies, let's say. And we're waiting to see for some actual more figures to see what things would look like with the four-town AOS versus a seven-town one. So but we were hoping to have Mrs. Ribeiro and Mrs. Stiles continue to emphasize what's already been going on and promote more of the collaboration between Bristol and South Bristol. And clearly from Mrs. Rivera's report tonight, there's a lot of new things going on as far as the band and the chorus swapping back and forth, as well as some of the other sports and different things that have already been happening. So that sounds very positive. So although we sort of came to sort of a temporary, let's not pursue this any further right now, we are still very interested in obviously collaborating with our neighbors and seeing what's going to be best for us all. And so we need to see kind of things, how they kind of sift through the sifter right now. And so as far as the restructuring committee, we're not going to meet really quickly. We were going to wait until some of this other information more came to light, some of the figures, and to see how the other board chairs and boards were kind of reacting to what's happening. So, yeah, we've been a long way, and we're sort of back at the starting line in a way, but we're all like different. So,
Well, you know a lot more now than you did before.
that's right.
So,
That's it. What's that song? I was a lot older. I'm younger then, and I don't know. That's it.
Now I got that song stuck in my head. I know what you're talking about.
I was older than I'm younger.
Yeah.
That's it.
You can name that song in 2 notes. You remember that show? All right, great.
Name that tune.
Okay. Thank you, Becky. Whole business. Reinstatement of the bus run. Let's see. How did that go? We empowered our financial director and our principal to look at how much money it would cost. Jen, I say those questions, and so one of the questions was, how much is a run? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I don't have that answer. That was
Oh.
around 6.
74.5.
74.5. So that's how much a run was, and that's what we took into account last year, 74,000. And
That's how
then,
much a full run costs. I think that we also looked at your budget, and there was some additional money there that we weren't going to use,
Mhm.
that we could, so it wouldn't be a full impact of 74.5 because there was some savings in other parts.
Right.
Because we looked at that, and it was like 15,000-20,000 that is available, because we had
Some of the
things
other
that were in
runs
there.
that we thought we need for something we're not sure that we needed, like, whether it be special ed or other things on that section.
Right.
And we need to, the other thing we have to do is what I would think we would need to do is to make sure that, I mean, that's the contract, that's what they will invoice us. And I don't think there's any room around that, but what we really need to do is sit down with first student, take a look at everything and make sure we budgeted everything correctly for how it's actually planned.
Right.
Because it's easy to say we added a run, but I always want to make sure that's going to be billed according to the way I understand the contract and I've seen the building before.
Okay.
But I think we're gonna need to draw about $67,000 from last year's fund balance forward to pay for it.
Okay.
And that's what we're aiming to, I think it's still too early at this meeting to come up with an official, for pass a motion to a specific amount of what you want to do with your fund balance forward. But likely next month, we'll have all that dialed down to a specific dollar amount. For not only that, but you have some opportunities to put some toward the capital reserve as well.
Okay.
And that work is not ready for this meeting tonight, but it's the work that we set out to do, and getting this report right was the first step in that.
Gotcha. Thank you. But some other questions that I had was, who makes so how much money was it? Who makes the runs? That's first student. So, in the room last month were all 4 of the drivers as well, including the first student rep. So you all, central office negotiates with that person, this first student rep, for that contract, that amount of money. That's correct?
Yeah, it's a 5-year contract.
Yeah.
It runs out in this budget. And right now, in fact, I spent a good bit of the afternoon working with my peer at Lincoln Academy, Wendy Corlett, on making sure that we line up the new RFP that has to go out to multiple bus companies, of which we, hope that we get multiple bids, but we may only get one for the first student by past experience. That will indicate exactly how many buses we need in the AOS, and I'm putting out 2 RFPs, one for Great Salt Bay as well, if, assuming everything goes the way we anticipate. But they'd be because they use some, secondary stuff.
Okay.
And but we need to kind of sit down with first student and go over all the issues. There weren't so many issues. When I met with Wendy this afternoon, we were like, okay, these are things to think about. But honestly, there isn't a lot of change here. And we just need to make sure that we, do due diligence of thinking about any changes we might make. But at least on the secondary stuff, and I don't see any big changes that have happened in the last couple of budgets on the elementary stuff. So I don't think that we're looking at a radically different plan. But it is time to talk about how we use our vans versus their vans, and how sort of unexpected situations that will inevitably happen over the next 5 years would be handled.
Mhm.
And that's some of the work I'm doing now. Starting with Lincoln Academy, but also, beginning to survey the principals as part of our process of putting together a new RFP. That has to go out in the next month, and be completed by the end of December is the timetable that the state has indicated they'd like to see transportation contracts settled at. Plus, we need to build budgets that have that cost in them.
Right.
And so we have to settle on all this stuff in the next 10 weeks. And that's a big piece of what will dictate our budgets for 5 years, because the transportation costs are likely to go up 15% to 20% from this year to next year. Based on the fact that's a 5-year contract. It hasn't been, there's been a good bit of changes in what things cost. It includes fuel, and 2019 was a long time ago in our economy. And there was very small increases each year. So the expectation is that, this is going to be a significant cost increase.
Okay.
Mrs. Rivera, have you heard any positive comments since the bus run has been reinstated, or any?
Haven't heard anything actually.
I'm just curious, are there, I guess we heard last month that buses were very crowded. Are kids riding that extra bus that?
So the buses were more full than in recent past, but they were not crowded, and they were not 3 to every seat. So I think,
When there was 3 in the afternoon.
it wasn't every seat of every bus.
Okay.
I think the younger kids are often can be put 3 to a seat to keep them closer, and I'm sure there was a little bit more of that, but the buses were at full capacity even with the 3 runs, even in the afternoon.
Mhm.
But more full than typical, which was noteworthy to the people driving for sure. And not all 3 runs were equally more full because of the logistic of where those runs need to go. So we haven't heard much. I will say that the thing that's noteworthy in the office is they sign off every day, and some of them sign off truly when the run ends, and some sign off when they can get to a communication, because not all the radios work in all the locations. It's Bristol, Maine. The telecommunications, even with those radios, don't always work appropriately. But the runs are signing off closer to 3 to 3:15 as opposed to 3:15 to 3:35. They were between 3:25, 3:40. It depends. It was the first week of school too. It was the first. That meeting was before we made the changes. So there were just adjustments for people getting in the right runs and drivers having to go back and backtrack. So the timing on the first 2 weeks was not a good accurate picture anyway,
Mhm.
but they are significantly shorter. And one of the runs right now does have a significantly lower number of kids. I mean, it is under 25 signed up to run that bus because
Right.
it's just of where those 4 runs then are designed. So, which, that's fine, it's just the choice. Right?
So my experience has been, it's netted 15 minutes less time, it seems.
I think a
Per
couple of
run?
the runs weren't that significant, but yes, some of them were 15 minutes.
Yeah.
short.
I know the runs that the run that my kids are on, it was at 3 and now they're there at 2:45. The one at the Y, was it?
Actually, I did get feedback from the Y.
The
Because
Y I appreciate it.
yes, because they start programming at a certain time and our bus was coming a little later, so
Yeah.
they found it better for their logistics.
How large is the Y run?
I would have to check. I don't know if depending on the day, can be a larger group, but, not always the most full run.
Mhm.
Okay.
So it really depends. And the Y is still providing us a roster of which days, which kids that belong to programming are riding it. So we get the parent bus note, but we also get the Y confirming those kids are enrolled in a program.
Mhm.
So for the Y program, it's different day, different program, is that
Some
correct?
kids are there every day for after school,
Yeah.
but
Right.
some have the Tuesday, Thursday activity right at 3. or whatever
Right.
time
That's
it
my
starts.
kids.
So,
Boxing.
Excuse me?
Boxing?
Yes, boxing. And yeah, so just to point out that all 4 bus drivers are here, the rep was here. And there was a question about routes, and so first student makes the routes. We don't have anything to do with making the routes. So all the complaints about the routes should go
Should
to
be addressed to
should be
first
addressed by
student.
first student? Okay,
I mean, that employee will converse with the person that works in the office here, because sometimes our person knows more about like where the kids might
Okay.
actually, again, there's just little like nuances to it, but first student creates the routes and runs it by the person in the office who helps manage bus notes and does the direct communication with drivers on a daily basis about changes.
Right.
So, but it is a first student responsibility for sure.
and then with regards to safety, so there was some concern about the amount of buses, or the people on the bus, and concern about if there were a fire on board, whether or not the kids would have enough time getting out, and I don't know how y'all answer that.
I mean, that's a generic answer. It's regardless, you can have a lot of kids not take very long because they're efficient, and you can have a lot of kids who struggle in that situation to get off easily, and you do evacuation practices.
Right.
But the buses are designed with a certain capacity, and we were under capacities enough, but I mean, not even close to top necessarily, capacity.
Right, because
So-
maximum capacity is like 70 something.
Yeah, depending on the age and which bus, the age of the kid's size
Okay.
and which bus they were on. Some buses have more seats or have different configurations. And then the question about buses being on site or not,
Yes,
well,
that was the
that's,
next
that
question.
issue is not, it's never been something we could manage. Like, we don't keep the buses on site. And in a crisis, we're calling central, our crisis plan has us letting the superintendent's office know there's a problem right away. If we're knowing we need off-site, that office is deploying for students coming as soon as possible, but GSB has buses. If whoever has a bus nearby is coming, it doesn't matter who's paying for the bus, right? In a crisis, they're gonna come.
Right.
Whether it's GSB's people or ours, but yeah, no matter what, this situation doesn't change it. Buses don't get parked during school during the day. It just hasn't happened. It was just.
And the crisis plan you're referencing, we go over every year. We haven't done that this year, but.
Have an executive session tonight.
Oh, great.
Funny that you say that.
And that, it's not, it's not open to the public because it has to do with health, safety, and security, so. But all of those scenarios are.
All within that
Yeah.
plan.
Okay. Any other questions about bus runs? Okay. Thank you. Generator update. Um, So the question specifically, last, if I remember correctly, had to do with where the money was coming from. That was your question, Laurie?
Or if there was a surplus,
Right,
could we take some of that money to cover
right,
this? Because there's a lot of, it's not very clear.
right.
As to the oversight of why the generator wasn't included. But that's a big deal to town budgets.
Oh, absolutely. Just to clarify, there was a generator included in the RFP. It was the same size that we currently have, which is like 30 kilowatt or something like that, 35. When the building advisory committee met, which includes myself, the fire chief, our head select board member, and a couple other town folks, they were of a mind that we needed a generator that would power the whole school. The 35 kW one will not power the whole school. The reason why it was to power the whole school was so that the sprinkler system would work and that we could conceivably have classes where there was a massive power outage in Bristol.
So those conversations didn't take place, considerations did not come up when the proposal was.
Correct. Yeah, yeah. So after the fact, after everything, we had the contractors in place and they were getting going and whatnot. And that building advisory committee, put that towards them and they said, okay, well, it's gonna cost this much money. So
what happens when it says it's gonna cost this much money? And then what is the decision making in terms of where that money's gonna come from, when you're gonna put your hand into the contingency? I think that those are things that I think it's not clear to kind of how that's done, because from a person on the outside, well, this is just what it's gonna cost and that's what we're gonna do. And it feels like there isn't due diligence to hold accountability of people making decisions and why they got to them. And it doesn't have to be in an adverse way. It's just like, just like when I've managed big budgets at my work, it's, you have to be accountable for how the decisions were made and why they were made, and there are reasons out of your control. So I think that's where the questioning comes from is, it's just, we'll just do this. And that's why I focus on that 450, because I'm like, well, could that cover generator? Could that cover the bus run? Could that be something that covers the other problem that I think was just brought up about the firewall?
Can I speak with that for a second? If you want to,
yes,
unless you want to run with it.
no,
So
as long as you bring up
So
the,
there's a couple of different ways that a capital reserve is built. It's all done by statute. So there isn't really any judgment around this. There's statute around how reserves work. And taxpayers vote money to put into the budget. They can assign money in the budget so that they build capital reserves intentionally. And that's been done in the past. In fact, that's why we have money in the capital reserve now, sitting there in the bank account, money that's been set aside for in case there was an issue with this, with the facility that the school committee wanted to spend it on. Now, should it use that money, it needs to also go to the taxpayers and ask for it to be expended. So there'd be an article in next year's town meeting that says to expend $232,000 from the capital reserve for generator. So that would come up in next year's meeting. So there's plenty of oversight and transparency and accountability around that. Now, when there's a fund balance forward, as there is right now, and we're just dialing that in as we prepare to send it off to the auditors and give a pretty good indication of how much we anticipate being there, the school committee can also just assign money to the capital reserve. Okay? Now, there's a little bit of a bit of gray area here before I kind of stated what I'm about to say. I was trained that the only way to get any money out of a capital reserve was to bring it to the taxpayers. it has been the practice of all the towns in the AOS that the school committee is allowed to expend money from their capital reserve if it's coming right out of the fund balance forward. And that's something that we would just walk through with our attorneys between now and the next public meeting before this money needs to be expended. The auditors, like the school committee's been appropriated, the school committee can spend it. And, but my training as a business manager, you always ask the taxpayers. So we just gotta find out exactly how we wanna do that. I think that always the safest thing is ask the taxpayers, you know? I think, but I don't wanna get ahead of the discussion that's to happen. My recommendation will be, when I come back with clearer numbers next month for the school committee, is that they just transfer a good chunk of that to the capital reserve, even if there wasn't a generator issue. That's what I would recommend they do with as much as they can, because that's money that's been appropriated, raised, people paid their tax bills, put it aside so that you can defer raising money next time around, or when the situation happens. The generator, as Darren explained, was a request of the Building Advisory Committee. The smaller generator that the architects did put in the RFP would have passed the legal requirements of a generator, but it isn't as robust a generator as the town members that serving on the Building Advisory Committee and then the school committee felt was really what is in the best interests. So there's plenty of oversight here and plenty of statute that will govern how it will move forward. And we'll continue to identify that and make a really clean trail of that, so it doesn't take up a lot of, frustration with people. Like you say, you want to have the accountability, you want to have the transparency, you want to know whether it's going to impact you financially.
Right, and how will this keep happening? So if the next time there's a capital, project, what's been, have people been brought into the conversation in the RFP process to say, you know what, things are changing and that's not going to be enough to run everything we need to run for the, on the generator or something like that. So I don't know the ins and outs, and but I think, last year I was at the town meeting and I come from a business background and I feel that there's just a lot of, I did notice the presentation for the ESC up on the website, but I feel that there's some, communication that needs to happen starting now. These are really complex discussions with regard to the AOS. You all have been deeply involved in it. And I don't know who's paying attention, and in the town, we're all busy with our work, we think, oh, it'll just be made, but I just want to help that it's not, that if we can get the word out and get, have some discussion, some type of discussion group so people can understand or have clear sides. This is how it works. I think part of it is people don't understand how government things work. So not a big lift, but just be able to help so that decisions and people are informed or hear the facts on the AOS discussion. Why is Great Salt Bay going out? Yes, it can be in the newspaper, but again, that's coming from a lens of someone reporting on it and not like, here are just the facts kind of thing. So I know that might sound like a lot, but I think it causes a lot of angst on the other side. And I think there are a lot of good decisions made in corporations. Everything's moving up to the shared services. So I'm not against, I'm for, but knowing that it's very opaque to people who aren't involved in it.
Well, just from my perspective as just somebody working in the central office on this stuff, I would love if you anytime just reach out to me and let me know what you think is confusing or doesn't seem to be transparent, because it helps me know what message to get out. I'm happy to lay it all out on the table.
Yeah.
Sent you the FY22 audit this afternoon. Chuck asked for things, quite a bit. So I'm happy to kind of dive in. In fact, that's one of the more enjoyable part of my job is people who really want to get in the weeds with some of this stuff is more interesting than than when not getting asked what's actually in the details. So I enjoy it, and I'd love it if you give me a call anytime to look at those things together. I would really love the process you're describing of getting ahead of the dialogue that happens just on the floor of a public meeting. Any help you can bring to, really asking the hardest questions and demanding the details is, I mean, Chuck's work has been exemplary over the years, and everybody in central office talks about those are the kinds of things that help us get things accomplished efficiently when we get into the public meeting. So that's, very welcome, and you can call me anytime.
That's great, I appreciate it. And now I know more who does what and how it works. Thank you.
And I'll give him a attaboy. Over the years that I've.
We're recording this, right?
Yes.
No, I find that if you ask the AOS, whether it's a superintendent or a business manager, they're very, very helpful. Your predecessors, they're very, very good. You're gonna ask. They're not gonna give it to you, but we have to ask, and if you ask, they'll respond. We don't like the answer, but.
Yeah, but I think it's all, everyone can face reality if they understand what the components are and what the, there's. Yeah, well. I don't even have kids and go do something else, but it's like, I moved here because I knew that there was a school here, it has a good reputation, and I really want families to stay here and bring their kids.
Thank you.
So, it comes from a good place.
And we want to be as transparent as we possibly can and communicate as possible. So.
All right, any other generator bids? ESC update, seems like
I think we've covered that with what it says motion to table on there because when we came out of the AOS meeting, whenever it was back then, the goal was to have some kind of formal documentation at the next town's meetings, just so it was identified that that action had been taken. The thought was coming out of that at that time when these agendas were designed was that a good approach would be tabling it, and it could be. Because as Peter's already referenced, there may be, and it would not surprise me if there was some kind of revisit to an ESC type format or formation down the road. So that's why we came up with the tabling.
Okay.
In complete transparency, Jefferson met on Monday, and they voted no. The motion was to not go forward with ESC. Nobleboro did the same thing last night. The rationale behind it is voting no doesn't mean we can't bring it back and talk about it because you're voting down the 7-town ESC.
Okay.
You're not shutting the door to a 4-town ESC. So that was their rationale behind it. And they wanted a yes or no vote. So I don't think either one of those, either the table vote or the yes or no vote I don't think either one of them is wrong.
But we should make a motion.
You should make a motion and make some kind of documented vote about moving forward with
All right.
ESC.
All right, make a motion to table it.
I would second that.
All right, we got a motion, a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Thank you. All for. New business, policy review.
Yeah, that's me too. The reason I have policy review on here, one of the other districts brought a policy concern, actually a community member brought a concern to the building administrator. And the building administrator reached out to me and wanted some guidance on it. So I immediately went to the website to look at the policy, and the policy wasn't there. So I'm like, okay, that's interesting. We have 3-ring binders as well with policy. They're pretty thick. And some of them actually have a typewriter written policy. I think it might have been in high school when one of them was written. But so what happened was, and policy review is very time consuming. It's extremely time consuming. So what has happened here and why some policies are here and some policies are here, the policies that are on the website are the mandated policies. They're policies that boards have to have by the state. So that was obviously your priority. So you've got those done. And those have links, those have, an active link to it. The others just don't appear, which is a little concerning because someone wants to know about a policy. They want to know if your district has this policy. They don't know. It looks like you don't. Yeah, unless you come in and it's either to the school or the central office. And to be honest with you, I have concerns whether what's in one binder is the exact same thing as what's in another binder. Just knowing how things happen over time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the binder and then I'll converse with you. And we're going to identify any policies that the district has. And I can tell you the one off the top of my head, it was IJOA. And that was a policy about board approving field trips, be they overnight or out of state.
Ah.
And I'm assuming you don't have, they maybe don't have it at all. A lot of boards do, but the reason the concern came up from the other district was that in their policy, it states that all overnight trips or trips out of state have to be approved by the board in October. Well, you know, as well as I do, opportunities can present themselves
Right.
in May. And the districts I've all been in, it was at least a month in advance. And usually, you know, in a month, if you're going to do an out-of-state trip or an overnight trip. So they're working on changing the language in there, so it says something along those lines. But I did look just to see if any other districts had it, and the only one I could find in was Great Salt Bay. So I started asking around, and that's what I found. So what I'm going to do, I spoke with legal counsel, is at some point, I'll get to it, and it's on my to-do list, I will identify what policies that are not mandated, but that you currently have on the books. And what I will do is I will go on, have them put on the website and identify the policy you have with a disclaimer. There won't be an active link, so it won't take the person to the policy like the other ones do. But it will just be a disclaimer saying these policies are currently on the books. You can get them from the school, the central office, or we'll send them to you if you ask. And as they become as we review them, and we'll piecemeal it, we'll identify which ones we think are priority, and probably do it. It's great summertime work. As we review them, you may make no changes to them at all, and you may just say we just state on it that it was reviewed in 2024, 2025. Then that policy will be moved up onto the website as an active link that people can go and see.
As
So-
it stands now, the non-mandated policies.
Are
do
not
they-
appearing on your website.
Right, but do they have what you can see, do they have an indication when they were put in place?
On the policy itself.
Yeah, okay, so it's
Yep.
there, the date.
It's dated on the
You
policy.
see that typewritten piece of paper, it'll have the date
Okay.
on
it
it.
will
Really
be
is.
dated.
There's a
Is there
few,
a-
Yeah.
So all those policies, like for the last 2 years anyway.
That we went over.
Yeah, those are
Mhm.
mandated.
Huge packets
Yep.
of policies to review, so those are all mandated.
Those are
policies.
mandated policies.
Yeah.
But which puts you in good shape with those,
Right.
because those have all been done
That's
2022,
it.
2023. It's just the others need to be done as well, and then they can be put away for another.
Are they just as
Fair time.
numerous, or
There's a lot of them.
We don't
there are a
know.
lot of them? We don't know.
You don't
Well,
know.
there's some that I would say.
You can get rid of
don't
policies.
exist
Yeah, yeah.
anymore, And whose job is it to
Yeah.
vote that we don't need this?
You could go through it and
Let
just
that
make,
issue
yeah.
didn't exist.
The misuse and abuse of typewriters probably in there.
You
Or
can,
hair shirts.
Yeah, right.
Horse and buggy
so that information will be coming and be updated.
transportation.
Thank you.
It's on a horse and buggy run. It's safe.
All right, so that's any other new business? Okay. And none policies, no policies.
Not yet.
Future board topics. Any future board topics?
Bus on there,
Plus.
and the fund balance, managing fund balance. Forward. And as long as we're, I don't see a reason why we can't have that kind of
You'll bring those to the
Yeah.
agenda setting when we do it.
Anyone else, anyone from the board have
Not right now.
do you have anything? We need the week before to set the agenda, so you've got until, from now until.
I just have one thing, and that is, and I know that not all of the data is currently available, but I would love to have some information in terms of how the school is doing by grade.
Sure.
Yeah, great.
Test scores.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
And I'm assuming you do that every year at some point during
Yeah,
the year.
Tara was doing it the past 2 years.
Oh,
She did
okay.
it from the centralized data. She would pull out all the
Okay.
data and the state tests. So,
Okay.
but I can do it. We just don't make it as fancy the chart. Spreadsheets are not my favorite thing. I'll make tables for you.
All right, well, that's it for board topics. We have our executive session. So, thank you for attending. And are we come out of these and vote?
Yep, so we need a motion to go into executive
Are there
session.
two of them?
No, just one.
Okay.
And the doors will shut and you'll do your executive session
Okay.
discussions. The recording will be shut off. We'll come out of executive session, public can return, and then the recording will resume. All motions have to be made in public. They can't be made in executive session.
I'll make a motion to adjourn to executive session.
I second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
1-0. And we're going in at 8:07.
Thank you. No, we-
They were just chatting on the phone.
all right.
Decided they didn't need it anymore.
Alrighty.
So
You can you can say there's no motion, or if someone wants to make a motion just to approve the safety plan as presented, you can certainly do that.
I'd make a motion to approve the safety plan as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Out, any other issues? Objection, the meeting adjourned at 8:35. Thank you. Okay.
Oh, no, then it's dark at like 4,
The owl off or on?
still on.
Thank you all.
Thank you.